那么今天晚上的讲座呢，是由我们 Ivy Campus 指南针所推出的。我们指南针的这个教育公司呢，前身为海域国际教育集团。我们大家都也知道丁老师丁老师的2个女儿也是非常优秀的。那我们 Ivy Campus 呢，是致力于为家长过滤口碑最好的前藤校招生官，以及独立的升学顾问资源，对接在升学的过程当中所需要的种种优质的课程以及竞赛辅导等一些教育资源。那 Ivy Campus Team 经常会有家长问我们那我可以直接找这个升学导师为什么要你们的团队的介入？那我们团队的介入有一个非常重要的一个 function， 就是我们能够帮助家庭去监控和质量把关，为孩子在升学过程当中的这个个人成长保驾护航。如果有任何的这个当中的一些沟通方面一些需求，我们团队会集合和寻求一些 additional 的资源，来帮助更好的我们升学导师来提供全方位的一些服务。同时呢 Ivy Campus 因为是在我们 AFI 和思慧的支持下，所以呢我们还为孩子提供了一些志愿者的服务，会连接 Wizwise 和 AFI 这边的资源，提供给孩子一些领导力以及其他一些软实力的提升，还有我们今天所推出的定制化的背景提升。我相信如果您有机会跟这些导师做一些沟通的话，那么这个导师在这个分享这个信息的过程当中，其实多次提到了一些定制化的背景提升项目对孩子提升他们的竞争力是有直接的帮助的。好，我还想花点时间来跟大家分享我们陆陆续续以及因为申请季已经过去了在这个4月底所有的学生该收到的录取通知都收到了。那么首先我们在这边呢已经获得了 John 我们最受欢迎的这个升学导师John Morgan Lally 的这个去年的这个骄傲的成绩。我跟大家分享一下我们陆陆续续还会推出其他导师的一些今年的战绩。首先呢这个John 大家都知道他是前康奈尔大学的招生官，那么在今年史上称为最冷最难的申请季，依然帮助学生斩获了众多的 top school 的 offer 我们还有些家长说，那这样是不是只辅导这个藤校的学生不是这样的因为这样你看他的成绩不仅仅是一些我们大家熟知的大藤小藤，同时他还帮助很多学生申请到了 top 50， 所以还有很多学生这些导师们的作用实际上就是在孩子们同等 academic 的这个成绩当中，能够帮他们往前面在这个 reach 一下，能够更好的去精准的去投一些比他们同等竞争者当中同等条件的情况下能够申请到更好更理想的孩子们的 dream school 那这样的您看到了他的这个 top school 的 offering， 总共所有的学生是171枚，平均每个学生收到了5个 school 的 offer。top 20 school 有63个 offer， top 50 school 有96个 offer所以这边已经给你很好的这个提出了，这样不仅仅是帮助那些申请藤校的，当然只是他的这个成绩的一部分还有 top 50 school 也有很多的 offer， 有96个 offer。那么他这个早申请的这个比例是相当的高的，我们前期也分享过，有80%的，他自己亲自辅导的学生 top 50 school 的录取率达到100%几乎100%。这样团队因为还有一些跟团队跟这样一起合作的这个 associate consultant 和这个我们叫一些其他的这个 combination 的这个 package， 那么他们申请的 top 50 school 的录取率达到了92%，这是非常非常可喜的，很高兴我们也很骄傲。那么也快速的跟大家分享一些我们 Ivy Campus 的几位顶级的A 级老师一个呢是我们将在5月底6月初应该是6月初会推出另外一位前招生官，是普林斯顿的一位非常资深的，在普林斯顿工作过36年的，同时对 financial aid 整个美国 financial aid 的 landscaping 有过极其大的贡献的一位资深导师叫 Don 他是普林斯顿的，在普林斯顿像我说的是有36年的工作经验，出来了以后退休了以后陆续辅导过超过500个学生，其中包括了将近300个华裔的这个学生。 那么这样就是我刚刚分享的在我们这个升学群当中非常受欢迎的一位升学导师。我们还有 Will Dixon 也在我们平台上做过2次讲座，他是杜克大学的前招生官。我们还有一位 Dr. Smith，Smith 呢是 Stanford 的前招生官，还有我们很受学生欢迎的 Frank Lin 呢，他不是前招生官，但是呢他是 UPenn Wharton 毕业的。对那些想申请 Economic 和 Finance 的学生来讲， Frank 导师有他独特的朋友圈、关系圈，还有独特的一些见解和 inspiration， 可以帮助孩子也是申请到非常非常好的一些 Dream School。那今天晚上哈，我看瑞导师已经从另外一个课程急忙忙的赶到了我们这边这个讲座哈。瑞老师您受欢迎，you know you are so liked by our students, so I know you are super busy. But tonight, our feature is for Ray Mathis. 那瑞导师呢是首先呢在我们的思慧学院已经做了很多的这个课程的这个 coach 他不但是在 investment 方面，还有在我们 economic 方面都是很有经验的。那今天晚上跟大家分享的是在瑞导师的指引下，会给我们学生去做一个我们叫 PBL。 那很多人也会问什么叫 PBL？ PBL 的简称是 Project Based Learning。我要大概的讲一下 Project Based Learning 跟 Teaching Class 和上课是2码事儿。 OK， 为什么要做这些项目呢？是因为在众多的孩子申请的这个过程当中，因为每个小孩子都会去告诉学校我感兴趣申请咱们的这个 interest 的这个专业，那么升学的这些 admission officer 就会想要看到，既然你告诉我 you like to be applying for economic, you like to applying for public policy, you like to applying for finance or business school, then you have to tell me during the 4 years of high school, what did you do to engage your interest? If you have to show the evidence to those admission officer, you have done deep thinking, engage some kind of project, research project. Also that project have the impact the community, then those projects will be extremely beneficial, also welcomed by those admission officers. So they understand those stories. So when John coaching student, often we hear from him saying towards 10th grade, 11th grade, you have to do some sort of PBL in order to increase your competitiveness. Okay, so tonight it's given to those students who focus on economic, also finance in public policy. So the subject today Ray is going to share is Wall Street helping Main Street. Like I just mentioned, whatever your study is, has to be impact your community. So this program is specially designed to make sure it's going to be valuable, it's going to be useful, and the end result is going to be able to enhance and help those lead consultant field your student and your kids should be involved in. So I am going to give the floor to Ray. I think the program detail we're going to, after Ray talk about what he's going to do, and then towards the end, I am going to summarize with Ray about how this program is going to be rolling out and how we're going to helping the student to apply for top school, dream school they're looking for. Okay, Ray, may I stop the sharing and give the floor to you so you can share in your PPT? Are you there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sounds good. I'm going to stop sharing and now I give the floor to you. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So, hi everybody. Yeah, so finance and economics are very tightly intertwined, and it's very important that we understand how economics works before we understand how finance works. Now, in finance, of course, is the study of the numbers and the present value of money, the present value of a future sum of money. That's the basis of finance. But a lot of it is directly impacted by economics. So we have to understand how economics are going to impact the future cash flows. And so finance and economics are so tightly intertwined that you cannot escape from one. If you're going to study economics, you're going to have to study finance. If you're going to study finance, you're definitely going to have a semester of macroeconomics and a semester of microeconomics at the very least. So they're very tightly intertwined. And what I teach students all the time when we're doing these finance and investment courses is that the study of macroeconomics is probably the biggest driver of your portfolio success. And that's why a huge percentage of hedge funds and mutual funds use macroeconomics as their main starting point for devising their strategy. So economics is a big thing. So just to give you an example of what I'm talking about, we're talking in class about different points, and we're talking about different things on the macroeconomic scale. Let me just back up for a second. And so, there are different sectors of the economy. There's 11 different sectors of the economy, and they perform differently given different economic indicators. So this is what we're talking about recently. You got information technology, healthcare, consumer discretionary, financials, consumer services, industrials, consumer staples, which is different than a consumer discretionary, energy, real estate, utilities, and basic materials. And you can kind of predict how they're going to do based upon the macroeconomic indicators. So economics and finance, very tightly intertwined. Not to get into too much detail about this, but I'm just telling you, different economic sectors perform differently given different economic environments. And so sometimes financials are the best performing sector, and sometimes energy is the best performing sector. It depends on what's going on in the economy. So if you study economics, you're going to have a lot of job opportunities because it's a very broad category of study. And you could be a chief economist somewhere if you want to get your PhD or your master's degree in economics, or you could be an analyst somewhere. But studying finance at the introductory level, if you're interested in the basic undergraduate level, finance and economics, they're going to be tightly intertwined. So this is very important to understand. Very tightly intertwined. All right. So let's talk about our PBL that we're going to discuss. So what I'm thinking about doing, and I've developed this with the different counselors that we have who are former Ivy League admissions officers. What we're going to do is we're going to discuss something that can benefit the society as a whole. And that's really hard to do with finance because, as you know, it's always in the media, the narrative is Wall Street versus Main Street, those greedy bankers versus the common person. Well, that's not really always the case. It's almost never the case, really, but that's the narrative. So we have to find the areas where if you want to go or your child wants to go into economics or finance, we have to find where can they fit in and where can they provide a narrative that is, we're going to help society as a whole using finance and economics. And there are a couple of different areas where we can do that, where we can make it clear that our goal and our case, our drive is towards benefiting the economy as a whole and benefiting society as a whole. And so one of the ideas we've come up with is doing something to combat generational poverty. And so this is a PBL that I think students can go in different directions if they want to put more time into the investment psychology or the macroeconomics or the microeconomics or the financial aspects of it or the fixed income trading aspects of it. There are a lot of different ways that students can go depending upon their interests. But this is a project that can be very deep, and they can do a lot of research on their own, and they can develop a lot of their own ideas. They can develop their own unique white paper, and they can advocate at different levels depending on what they want to do. So they can take this project into different categories. But one of the things I think would be really great is if students started studying how Wall Street helps to benefit Main Street. This is me, portfolio manager, equity analyst, and we won a global investment competition. And I'm happy to say I was in Philadelphia last month for the awards ceremony for our students who won the global investment competition. And also we were in Delaware for the Diamond Challenge competition. So we had a lot of teams that were very successful this year. And a lot of our students have a nice mark they can put on their resume to indicate how industrious they are, smart they are, and how influenced they are by current events, and how they want to impact the economy and society as a whole. So anyway, we've done great things over the past year. I'm very proud of these things, but let's move on. So in this project-based learning, what I think I want students to explore is what causes generational poverty and what methods can be used to help break the cycle of poverty, and how can Wall Street, meaning financial professionals, help underprivileged communities to thrive. And that's a hard question to answer, and it's probably a question you wouldn't be able to answer if you just heard me ask the question. But I'm going to teach you how this is going to help and how students can help do this. And at the end of the day, what I would really like is for students to be able to understand this concept so thoroughly that they can describe it to others and they can present material to others, because that is going to be advocacy. And advocacy is what really gets college admissions council or college admissions officers, that gets their attention. If you're doing something about a problem and you're advocating for a solution, that gets their attention. And in this case, what we're going to see is that we have a serious problem in this country. We have poverty. We should not have poverty. We have not only poverty, we have generational poverty, which means that people are born into poverty and they remain in poverty, and their children then are born into poverty and they remain in poverty. And that's a problem. It's a big problem that we have in this country. We have underprivileged communities in this country, and they cannot get out of poverty. So we're going to try to find, through this PBL, how we can help to solve this problem. Different ways we can solve this problem. And throughout this project, we're going to talk about different subject areas. And again, students can take any of these and run with it. If you want to talk about the socioeconomics of poverty, take that ball and run with it. If you want to talk about education, take that ball and run with it. If you want to talk about economics, take that ball and run with it. If you want to focus on the finance, that's great. Take that ball and run with it. If you want to talk about politics, take that ball and run with it. Now, I don't think this is a highly political topic of conversation. A year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, people would have said this topic of conversation is highly political. I don't think it is now. I mean, the fact of the matter is this: Democrats want children to be educated. They don't want children to be illiterate. They want them to be educated and get a good job. They want to break the poverty cycle. Republicans want children to be educated, and they don't want children to be illiterate. They want people to break out of the poverty cycle. Everybody wants the same goal, but they have different solutions. So at times, this could be a political issue, but I don't think it's that political, because Democrats have really embraced this topic recently and have come to really embrace this. And I saw something that was very heartening to me in the last week, where former Mayor Bloomberg donated $50 million to New York City and had a joint press conference with current Mayor Adams. And they talked about schools and how COVID has hurt our children and hurt their education levels. And it's very sad. But they talked about how funding these summer school programs is going to help children in the future and get them back on track. Now, I know a lot of you have your kids in private school. If you have your kids in public school, you know the same thing. COVID has hurt these children. They've lost years of education. It's bad. I mean, there were years when kids were just working from home and learning from home. Now, if you're working from home, you know how this is. You know what you're doing in your job. But if you're a student and you're supposed to be learning, you don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're supposed to be learning. It was a problem. So this is a big issue right now. Getting kids back on track and helping them get back into where they should be and helping them promote themselves to colleges is a big issue right now. So anyway, so our topics we're going to cover in this: socioeconomics, education, economics, finance, and politics. We're going to cover all those issues. I don't want you to be dissuaded if you think it's a political issue. I do not think this is a political hot potato anymore. This is a subject area where it's widely understood that kids have to get back to school and kids have to have good education in order to get to college and be successful in life. So this should not be a political hot potato for everybody or anybody. All right. So anyway, let's talk about the socioeconomic aspects. And if the students want to take this ball and run with it, that's great. We can help with that. We're going to discuss this. It's going to be great. But what we're going to discuss is what causes generational poverty. Now, you and I are not impoverished, but there are people in this country and in other countries, but we're going to focus on the United States. There are people that are impoverished, and their parents were impoverished. Their grandparents were impoverished. Their children will likely be impoverished. There is a situation where we have an issue in this country where people cannot get out of poverty. And there are multiple reasons for that. We'll go into some of them. We'll go into all of them. We're going to do some research on this subject. This is going to be a subject we're going to tackle first. We're going to discuss the reasons why this is a problem in this country. And there are multiple reasons why. But one of the things we're going to do is we're going to discuss why does it persist in underprivileged communities. We're going to discuss the welfare trap, which is one of the biggest problems, which is tied in to the other problems, such as education. And so we're going to discuss what methods are used to combat generational poverty. And there are a couple of different ones. And so we get to the next topic, which is the welfare trap. And this is where we're going to get into the socioeconomics. So if your student wants to discuss economics, we're going to get deep into the weeds on economics. And then we're going to get deep into the weeds on finance, but that's fine. So here's one of the first things we're going to discuss, the welfare trap. So people who don't earn much money, the blue bars, just to show you, are the amount that represents the amount of money people make after taxes. This dashed line here is the gross income. So this is what you're earning. This is your paycheck right here. And after taxes, you earn this amount, this blue line. That represents you and me. That represents a vast majority of people in this country. The problem we have, though, is that we have all these other benefits that roll off if people earn more money. So if you're very, very poor, if you're impoverished, the government will throw money at you. SSI, Social Security, we got SNAP, that's food stamps, that's the red. We've got housing assistance here. It could be anything. It could be public housing, or it could be vouchers. You know, there's a lot of different things. Child care credits. Here we've got Medicaid, and here we've got CHIP. Okay, so all of these things add up. Now, here's the problem we have. If you're a financial professional, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is called a drawdown, right? If your fund is up and then you have a decline, then you have to get back to even. And here we have a drawdown, where if you earn more money, the benefits roll off faster than you can earn more money after taxes. And so this is a big problem. And this is one of the cruxes of the socioeconomic factors we're going to discuss in this class. We're going to discuss the problem here, because the problem typically is to throw more money at it, which creates more hurdles. But at the end of the day, from peak to trough, you've got a big drawdown, and you have to make it from peak to peak. So what you're basically talking about is people who are making $30,000, they have to make over $70,000 or $80,000. And there's only one way to do that. And this is what we're going to get into. It's called the multi-generational approach, and it's based upon educational opportunities. So that takes us to the next level where we can talk about education. It's not about throwing money at the problem. It's not about tax the rich and throw money at people. It's about education. This is going to help people get from point A to point B. Because if you can't get people from point A to point B, then none of this works. You can't just throw money at these problems. So this is what we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk about education. There's another subject. If your student wants to focus on education, take the ball and run with it, go with it. That's great. We're going to talk about trade schools. We're going to talk about the problem of overcrowded schools, because we have a lot of that in inner cities. And we're going to talk about charter schools. And this is where it can get a little political, but I want to assure you this is not a political hot potato. Charter schools are not a big problem. And we're going to talk about public economics. So if your student wants to focus on economic policy and government, that's great. Take the ball and run with it. We're going to discuss this too. We're going to talk about how cities and states pay for improving education, how they pay for education. We're going to talk about how they can access seed capital, and we're going to talk about cost-benefit analysis. Now, basically, I'll tell you where this is going. This is a project where I want the students to understand that the two-generation approach. So I have a question in the chat. Will you choose a topic project for the student? Will the student choose a project? Okay, so I'm guiding them towards a topic and a project. But if they, like I've been saying the whole time, if they want to focus on a particular area and emphasize that more in their research, that's fine. And I would wholly encourage them to do that and help them explore those areas of expertise. If that's what they want to focus on, that's fine. But I'm going to give you some subject areas where I know that we can produce results for the economy, for society, improve society as a whole, and help you demonstrate that you're benefiting society as a whole. Now, so what we're going to talk about right now is the two-generation or the multi-generation approach to generational poverty, which is education. You know, just to flip back here, you can't get from point A to point B here without education. Adults, you're going to have to go to trade school. But the kids, the students, the children, you can get them out of failing schools and into schools where they're not going to be illiterate. They're going to learn things, and they're going to understand things, and they're going to go to college, and they're going to get a good education, and they're going to jump from point A to point B. And that is what is going to break the cycle of poverty. That's what this is all about. And so that's how we're talking about public economics. How do we pay for these educational opportunities? And sadly, a lot of our educators don't know how to pay for things because they're not financial professionals. And also, sadly, a lot of our politicians do not know how to pay for these things because they're not financial professionals. They want to talk a good game and talk about how they are going to provide better educational opportunities for students in the inner city, but they don't know how to do it. But we're going to learn how to do it in this course, and we're going to advocate for certain programs that will help, and how Wall Street can help benefit cities and states to build better schools if they have overcrowded schools, or build new schools if they have underperforming and failing schools, and to help students, adult and child alike, multi-generational approach, break out of that cycle of poverty and get out from that $30,000 earnings into $70,000 and above, to get out of this. And that is something that is really going to help your students make a mark for themselves when they're applying to college, because they're going to show that they understand how this works and they've done something for society to help people. And it's going to be finance and economics involved. So, and from the financial perspective, what we're going to discuss is fixed income markets. Now, We're going to discuss municipal bonds or green bonds. Municipal bonds and green bonds are great areas of conversation because why? Because they benefit society. And this is going to look great on your student's resume. And also, when they go to college and study finance or economics, they're not going to learn anything about finance bonds, or they're not going to learn anything about municipal bonds or green bonds. Maybe 1 or 2 lectures about municipal bonds, 1 or 2 lectures about green bonds, but it's a huge area. So I got to tell you, as a financial professional, and a lot of you who are on this call are probably financial professionals, you know that equity, everybody knows how equity works. The whole sector is shrinking in terms of payroll, in terms of headcount. There are no traders, computerized. You don't need analysts anymore, computerized. Portfolio managers, computerized. Everything is shrinking down, shrinking down, shrinking down. But you know what's not shrinking down? Fixed income. Fixed income is a lot different than equities. Stocks, maybe a company like Ford that's been around for hundreds of years has 1 stock. It's got common stock. It can issue more stock. It can buy back stock. It's the same stock. But they may have had hundreds of bond issues throughout the years. All have different CUSIPs. They all have different coupons. They all have different maturities. And so when they issue a new bond, you have to have bond analysts. And that is a completely different ballgame. And so I would like to take students in this direction to demonstrate their understanding of finance by delving into the fixed income markets. But by doing so, what we can do is get into municipal bonds and green bonds, things like that, things that benefit society, things that college admissions officers really like. So we're going to get into this. Now, I'm just giving you an example here with poverty and charter schools. We can go more into sustainable energy and green bonds, things like that. That's another aspect we can pursue. But for tonight's example, we're just going to talk about educational opportunities. So municipal bonds are a really unique area because they're tax-free. So investors love to buy municipal bonds because you don't have to pay taxes on the interest. That's really a key thing. Now, if your student is worried about the political situation, or if they're interested in politics, my son, for example, is a political science major in college. I want to just play a small clip of this. This is a long press conference, but I want you to see that this is not a Republican issue. It's not a Democrat issue. I know that sometimes this is a political hot potato, but it should not be, because in order to fix things, Democrats are involved in this, and they really want to make this a solution. And so this should not be a Republican versus Democrat situation.
Mayor Eric Adams and former Mayor Michael Bloomberg are making an education announcement for New York City.
How many years was that? Anyways, thank you for all the great work that you're leading on behalf of our city students, and it couldn't be more important or more urgent. Our administration, as you know, had a chance to work with Sheena back when she led the Abyssinian Development Corporation and later the United Way, and it's great to be joining forces with her again. And thank you, Mayor Adams, for all of your leadership in confronting the big challenges that our city faces, and for welcoming me back to City Hall. This feels just like the good old times, except that when Room 9 asks a really difficult question, I'm going to say, you handle it, not me. But seriously, I was glad to have the chance to welcome back each of my predecessors to City Hall, and I'm glad that you're carrying on that tradition. Now, I know we've just passed your 100th day in office, and I remember reporters asking me when we hit 100 days, what did you do? And I said, well, we built a team. And they said, yeah, but what did you do? And I said, we built a team. That's right. It didn't make headlines, but it did make possible all the success that we achieved over the next 4,000 days, because it all started with a great team that we built, and the vast majority of whom actually stayed for 8 to 12 years, if you go back and look. It's really quite amazing. In a business where people turn over every 6 months to 2 years, lots of people stayed around, and they stayed around because we were making a difference and they wanted to be part of it. Mayor Adams has been building a strong team, and it's great to see some of our administration alumni among the commissioners and senior staff. So I really am very optimistic about the future of the city, especially as the worst of the pandemic, I hope, finally seems to be in the rearview mirror. But for a lot of young New Yorkers, the crisis of the past 2 years may only just be starting unless we act, and that's why I am here today. The data is clear, and it paints a devastating picture. After 2 years of school closures and inadequate remote instruction, students across the United States have fallen behind, sometimes as much as a whole year. And the harm has fallen heaviest on the children who were too far behind, especially low-income Black and Latino students. Without urgent help, many of them will fall either further behind, which could have devastating effects on their chances for graduating high school and going to college or beginning a career. That would be a disaster for them, but also for our city and our country. Here's one way to think about this moment. Right now, scientists all over the world are studying long COVID to understand it and how to treat it. Well, what we're talking about today is the educational equivalent of long COVID. The good news is we know how to treat it, extra help and intensive instruction, and we've got to provide it, and we're going to start right now. We can't let a whole generation of students suffer from long COVID when it comes to their education, and I know the mayor and chancellor feel the same way. They both deserve credit for recognizing the crisis and taking immediate action by expanding the city's summer school program called Summer Rising. That's a critically important step, and it will help an awful lot of students. This really is an all-hands-on-deck moment. Private sector and philanthropic groups have a duty, I think, to step in and do what they can, and our foundation is going to do our part. Together, with a group of partners, we're committing $50 million to help charter schools create or expand summer school programs that will provide a coverage of an average of 5 weeks of additional instruction in math and English. All charter schools serving students in grades K through 12 are eligible to receive funding for the program, which will target students who are most in need of extra help. Schools can apply for funding starting today through the website summerboostnyc.org. The funders joining our foundation in this effort include Ken Griffin, Stan Druckenmiller, the Carson Family Charitable Trust, Robin Hood, Gray Foundation, and the Walentis Foundation. And I wanted to publicly thank them.
I just want to say right there that this is one of these rare areas where you can clearly say the Wall Street is helping Main Street. When you talk about Griffin and Bloomberg and all these people, the fact that they're donating money to the inner city communities to help educational opportunities for underprivileged children really makes the point that Wall Street is in fact helping Main Street. And if you're going to go into finance or economics, I know that a lot of people do because they want to make money, but in order to get into the best schools, you have to demonstrate that you have an understanding of how this works for society. And so we really need to understand this. Now, I played this because I want to diffuse the political hot potato that this may be a Democrat versus Republican issue. It's not, okay? It's not. This is an issue that people want. They want children to have better educational opportunities across the board. All right, so that is a key. And also, if your student wants to go into political science, you know what? Then you take the political aspect of what we're talking about and run with it. Because at the end of the day, I think the best outcome is not to just write a white paper and have an abstract. That's good. That's something we would like. But I think that the students that are pursuing a degree in economics or finance should understand how these things work and present something to their city council or their town council or their state legislature. Do a presentation. Advocate for better educational opportunities, advocate for better financial opportunities for students. because ultimately that is what is going to set a student apart. Advocate. That is something that's really going to help them. And it's something that I think is going to benefit society as a whole. Because when you study this sort of subject matter and you understand it, you can help. Unfortunately, we have a lot of politicians in this country, as you and I know, from either side of the political spectrum, that are professional politicians. They really don't know how these things work. They don't know how finance works. They don't know how the capital markets work. They don't know how the educational system works. And they're going to get sucked up into special interests. If your student can advocate to them and tell them how you can produce results, that would be really, really beneficial and look great on their resume. Anyway, enough of that. So yeah, here's our textbook, the Fixed Income Analysis from the CFA Institute, which is Chartered Financial Analyst Institute. So this is a very important thing. We can get a PDF of this. But what we're going to talk about, I didn't want to make too many slides about this because we always have spies in this. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how inner cities, underprivileged communities can have better educational outcomes and break the cycle of poverty. And one of the things we're going to discuss is how to build new schools. Now, most cities don't know how to do this. Like I said, they're politicians who've come up from being, town councilors, and now, maybe they're the mayor. They don't really know about finance or economics. But what we're going to see as we study these subjects is that, by and large, if you're in a suburban community or you're in an area where they have good schools, private schools or charter schools are not going to change the educational outcome at all. But if you're in the inner city and you have failing schools and you have generational poverty because you've got a situation where people can't earn more money, they're illiterate, or they don't graduate high school, you've got problems. And in those situations, private schools can really benefit society. Now, most politicians are going to think, well, we can't pay for that. But I'm going to show you that we can pay for that, and it's not going to be expensive because there are certain issues financially that we can deal with. For example, revenue bonds, municipal bonds that are revenue bonds. And in fact, I've had a lot of experience dealing with private schools and charter schools that have been founded and started, and their campuses have been built using municipal bonds. Now, normally when somebody issues municipal bonds, people get upset because, they're using taxpayer money to build a new stadium or whatever they say. But no, that's not the case at all. This doesn't cost the city or the state any money. Investors are putting the money in to, you're issuing new bonds. The investors are putting money in. The city and the state are not paying money for this, but you're building a new campus and starting a new school and breaking that cycle of poverty by providing educational opportunities outside of the traditional public school problems that we've had. Now, this gets us into the next level of finance. This is not an economics level. This is a finance level. We're going to get into finance a lot. We're going to talk about fixed income. We're going to talk about municipal bonds. We're going to talk about how the convexity of bonds, the maturity of bonds, the different types of revenue bonds, general obligation bonds. What are the differences between all these things? Your students are going to have a very great opportunity to demonstrate their expertise in an area that goes far beyond what most finance professors know. So when they get to college, they're going to know more about municipal bonds than the professors are going to know. Trust me on this. And they're going to demonstrate that they have a knowledge of this that as far surpasses any other student. So that's going to set them apart from other students. They're also going to have an impact on society if they use this knowledge to advocate for better outcomes and to advocate for breaking the cycle of poverty. That is going to set them apart from other applicants to college. So anyway, that pretty much wraps it up. I think that I should stop here. One of the reasons I'll say this as a side note, that I wanted to really go into municipal bonds with students is because it's really fun to research, and they can do really in-depth research on their own. Because if you just talk about stocks, you can't call the company and get the president or the CEO on the phone and ask them questions, because first of all, they're not going to pick up the phone. And second of all, even if they did pick up the phone, they have regulations like Reg FD and all these other things where they can't tell you anything more than what they've discussed previously in their press release or their publicly announced comments, like their conference call. However, with municipal bonds, if we're funding a new school expansion, you can call the school and you can ask them questions. They will pick up the phone. They will answer your questions about their debt to equity ratio, their fixed, their debt service coverage ratio, their interest coverage ratio, their revenue growth. How many students are, in the backlog? How many students are in the queue? I mean, there are waiting lists to get into these schools. And so you can ask them all these questions, and they're going to tell you things that are not publicly disclosed information. Now, if it were a stock, you would get in trouble if you asked those questions or somebody answered those questions. But in this situation, we can ask these questions, we can do fundamental research financially and economically, and we can really get an understanding of how these schools operate and what's going on with them, and we can get real answers. We're not going to get in trouble, but we can start learning how to do fundamental research. So it's a great way for students to really get involved in finance and economics and do a lot of research on their own. So I'm excited to do this program, and I think the students are going to love it, and I think it's really going to give them a leg up on the opposition, the competition, when they're applying for college. So anyway, that's it from me. I'm going to turn it back over. Bye-bye.
Right. No, don't leave, Ray. We still, don't leave. We have a question to answer. I think, first of all, thank you very much. I think all the audience know Ray is well liked by young students, study finance and study economics. And you're also the coach leading, I can only see in this small circle, you're the coach took on student going to the high school investment competition in Washington.
That one in Philadelphia?
Yes, you got number one. You are that coach for number one.
Champions, reigning global champions. Woo!
Absolutely. So kudos to you. Congratulations. And Ray absolutely had the deep knowledge and also the passion and also know how to leading our student to deep thinking, understanding the subject better. Can you stop the sharing the screen? So I want to go back to what Allison is. Yeah, hold on 1 second. I wanted to go back to this. And so we can talk about the program better. Hold on 1 second. Okay, let's do this. You can see the screen, right? Okay. Now we can talk about the detail about this program. I think there's a parents asking some of the questions. First of all, I wanted to make sure the parents are listening, are understanding why we're doing this. All the program design, we had a multiple conversation with John, with the former Cornell admission officer. We make sure the lead consultant is agree and also plotting for the program design. So he had a multiple conversation with Ray, and Ray also designed this program to make sure the end of deliverable and also the content are matching what lead consultant for the college application are looking for. So we want to make sure whatever we're doing here, the PBL is exactly can be used by those students during the college application process. Okay, so number one, I want to repeat, Ray is that coach leading to the group winning that Philadelphia UPenn Wharton investment competition, number one. So he's super qualified. And number two, this program is suitable for finance interest, economic interest, also business interest for 10th and 11th grade high school students. And this program, again, I wanted to make sure, emphasize, is not a class. Okay, Ray is not here to teach in class, but we designed to have 6 group lessons. What that means is, lesson means it's just getting gears for the student to understanding some of the fundamental knowledge, some of the basic principles, understanding municipal bonds, understanding the green bonds, understanding some of the terminology and also the base knowledge. So we have a student gathering, although, we're going to have a small class. It's going to be, we are only recruiting and also going to help 6 students for this PBL, for this project, for this research project. So the time with Ray, with the coach, only a icing on the surface. Actually, students have to do some of the work on their own. They have to do research on their own. They have to do understanding some of the interests, what impact their community. So they have to spend 70% of the time beyond or besides the time with Ray. So Ray will be spending an hour or an hour and a half, 90 minutes, twice a week during the summertime, okay, twice a week. It's every Tuesday and Friday in the morning of 10:30 to 12 o'clock in the Eastern Standard Time. This is the time we call office hour. That office hour is designed for the student to get in touch with Ray, to ask him questions, to explore further, to broaden their knowledge and also broaden their view, and also help them deep thinking on the subject they're interested in. And then after that 6 group lesson, then we arrange 6 more one-on-one session. One-on-one session where is, I saw a parent asking questions. Student, generally speaking, should go search some subject related to their local community. Because I remember John mentioned, if they can do something related to their local community, then first of all, they have opportunity to do advocacy towards end. Second of all, they can be so passionate about what they impact, and that can be a very convincing story to tell the application portfolio application results to those admission officer. Okay, so towards end, we also going to have a session besides one-on-one. We also arrange someone as a writing coach. This lady is named Nancy. She's graduate from Yale. She also doing a lot of work with Columbia University to helping Columbia University to do a lot of their research paper editing. So we're going to have this coach lady going to be on the end helping our student to writing their paper, research paper, much better. So in order for them to be published somewhere. Okay, so this program you can see is 3 tiers. One tier is group, we call group lesson, group class, to understanding some fundamentals so they can discuss the Wall Street meets the Main Street. Okay, focus on that area. Then we're breaking out to 6 session one-on-one, meaning the participants, the student will schedule time with Ray separately on their own. That's one-on-one time, so can be very customized, customized. So student can working on their own subject, and then towards the end, we're going to add 1 or 2 sessions, helping the student to polish what they're writing, to make sure the research paper makes sense. The research paper is more logical and more structured, and to make sure the paper is able to publish somewhere in order to have end result to be a hard course delivery to add on their competitiveness for their college application. Okay, so the time we just mentioned from July 5th to July 22nd, every Tuesday and Friday in the morning. And then the second 6 session, student make appointment with Ray one-on-one. And end of result, deliverable. Every parent wanted to know what's deliverable. The deliverable, we also have a team, like I said, besides helping the writing quality, we're also going to recommending the student where they can be published. Ray can help on that. We also have another very good of associate consultant, Lynn, and he's also partner with Ray, coaching those students, got the #1 in Wharton investment competition. Okay, and also if you're doing fantastic job, Ray can also write a personal recommendation letter. And those letters are also very important because I remember John mentioned those coach letters can be so deep involved to tell why the student is doing a good job during this PBL. Okay, this is research project. It's not a class, so you're not sending your student coming to learning a lesson, but it's research. So the student doing a lot of things on their own.